Grandma Rose passed away on a Tuesday. It was raining, not a downpour, just a slow, sorrowful drizzle that coated the windows like tears. I remember standing by the stained glass window of the funeral home, watching the drops streak down like time itself was bleeding. She was gone, and with her, a kind of warmth I never thought could disappear so completely. She had been more than a grandmother to me, more than bedtime stories, birthday cards, and hugs that smelled like vanilla and lavender. She was the only person in our family who saw Emma and me as individuals, not roles to be filled or trophies to be shown off. When she spoke, she listened too. When she gave, it was never with strings. Her passing left a cavern inside me, and the funeral only deepened it. My parents were dressed impeccably, of course. Black tailored suits, controlled expressions. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her sobs neat and well-timed. My father played the stoic widower's son, saying all the right things to all the right people. Emma stood beside me, holding my hand like she used to when we were kids. For that brief, tear-soaked day, we were a unit again. It didn't last. About 2 weeks after the funeral, I found myself wondering about the will. Grandma had mentioned it once, not in a greedy way, just in passing. "I want to make sure you and Emma have a cushion," she said, slicing apples at the kitchen counter. "Life's hard enough. You deserve something to fall back on." It wasn't something I dwelled on until after she was gone. I figured her house, her car, her little stash of savings, it would be handled responsibly. She had even told us both, years ago, that there was a trust set up for each of us. Not to spoil you, she'd laughed, just to help you. One afternoon, I asked my mom gently, "Did Grandma have a will?" She smiled, a little too tight. "Of course, honey. Everything was taken care of. Don't worry about that." I did worry, not because of greed, but because something didn't feel right. I mentioned it to Emma the next week, over coffee. She shifted uncomfortably and stirred her latte 3 times before answering. "Mom told me it was all going to the estate, that there wasn't anything left for us. Said Grandma had medical bills, debts. That didn't sound like Grandma. She owned her home, no mortgage, no credit cards. She drove a 10-year-old Buick and clipped coupons until the very end. She didn't do debt. The unease grew in my chest like ivy creeping along brick. I tried to dismiss it. But little things kept piling up. Dad suddenly had a new watch. Mom started talking about redoing the guest bathroom. They were subtle, just small enough not to seem out of place. But I noticed, and I started to wonder. Then Emma stopped answering my texts. The silence stretched for weeks. When I finally called her, her tone was cold. "I don't appreciate you implying Mom and Dad stole from us," she snapped. I didn't say. I tried, but she cut me off. "You always act like you're the only one who knew Grandma. You think you're entitled to everything. Maybe if you hadn't moved away, she would have trusted you more." I hung up shaking, hurt blooming across my chest like bruises. Where had that come from? Emma and I weren't perfect, but we were us. Sisters, teammates, best friends, or so I thought. I lay awake that night, her words looping in my head. "You always act like you're the only one who knew Grandma." It wasn't true, but it wasn't nothing either. Had I made everything about me? Had grief made me paranoid? No, that was what they wanted. That was the trick. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized my parents had done this. Somehow, they had planted poison between us. Slowly, carefully, lies here, doubts there, little seeds of division. They were trying to make us fight each other so we wouldn't look too closely at them. One night, I sat on the floor of my apartment and pulled out an old box of letters Grandma had sent me in college. Tucked between the envelopes was a photocopy of a document, the trust agreement. It was simple, $200 to me. $200 to Emma, held in trust to be accessed upon her death. There it was, in black and white, and that's when it really sank in. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't an oversight. My parents had taken it, all of it. And worse, they had turned Emma and me into enemies, just to cover their tracks. I wish I could say I sprang into action, that I stood up and became some kind of crusader, but the truth is, I broke down. I cried for hours, not just over the money, though yes, that too. I cried for Emma, for Grandma, for the family we used to be. For all the moments stolen from us by people who were supposed to protect us, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But mostly, I wanted to rewind time. Instead, I wiped my eyes, picked up my phone, and made a decision. If Emma wouldn't believe me, I would find proof, and if our parents had turned us into enemies to hide what they'd done, then they were about to find out what would happen when their daughters finally stood on the same side. Time has a cruel way of stretching silence. Days turned into weeks after my last conversation with Emma. We didn't speak, not even a text, not for birthdays. Not for Grandma's memorial lunch, not even when Mom called us both her two girls, in a Facebook post beneath a smiling family photo that felt like a lie. The picture looked perfect. Our parents in the center, arms around us, smiles on our faces. But that photo was taken before the trust, before the silence. Before I knew what they'd done. By then, the damage was already done. Emma had stopped answering my calls. She wouldn't meet me in person, and when I bumped into her once outside the grocery store, she barely nodded before ducking into her car. Her eyes were distant, cold, like I was the villain in her story. The strange thing was, I didn't even blame her. Not entirely, she didn't see it, not yet, but I did. I started digging. Late at night, I'd pore over old emails from Grandma, letters, financial advice she'd shared. She used to call the trust my girl's nest egg. She'd told us she created it after she sold her antique shop. She wanted us to have something, freedom, maybe, or just a safety net, to soften life's inevitable blows. I knew she'd met with a lawyer. I remembered because I drove her there once, so I looked him up. It took 3 days to reach someone at his office. Another 2 to convince them to speak with me. Are you Ms. Taylor? The secretary asked. Yes, I'm her granddaughter. There was a pause. Then, we aren't at liberty to discuss details, but if you're a named beneficiary, you're entitled to certain information. I'll have someone contact you. The next morning, a man named David Caldwell, estate attorney, emailed me. Attached was a scanned copy of the trust. It was dated 5 years ago, $400,000 held in trust for Taylor Morgan, me, and Emma Morgan, split evenly. Disbursed upon death of Rose Morgan. I stared at the document, my hands trembling, no mention of my parents. No debts listed, no clauses about conditions or medical expenses, just a simple, clean promise she had meant for us to have it. So where was it? That question gnawed at me constantly. The anger in me grew, not like a wildfire, but like slow, burning coals. Controlled, quiet, but hot. I tried talking to Mom again. I didn't mention the documents, just tested the waters. So did the estate ever get settled? I asked casually one evening, sitting in their kitchen while Mom sipped tea and scrolled on her iPad. Oh, you know how these things go. Paperwork, lawyers, honestly, your father handled most of it. That's weird, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Grandma's lawyer said everything was already disbursed. Mom blinked. What do you mean? I mean the trust, the one with $400K for Emma and me. Her face changed then, just a flicker. But I saw it, a tightening around the mouth, a flick of her eyes. She recovered fast. Sweetheart, there was no money left. Your grandma had some unexpected expenses, medical care, taxes. You know how it is. No, I said slowly. I don't, because that's not what her lawyer said. That did it. Her expression hardened. I don't appreciate this tone. You don't understand how estate matters work. You're emotional. Grief makes people paranoid. There it was. The gaslighting. I didn't respond, just stood and left. The next day, Emma posted a photo on Instagram. Her in a new apartment, exposed brick, huge windows. My dream home finally happened. #grateful, #blessed. 2 months earlier, she was drowning in student loan debt and working double shifts at a bookstore. Something didn't add up. I DM'd her, hey, can we talk? I think there's something you need to know. No reply. I sent the trust document as a photo. She read it, no response. The next morning I got a text. Emma, stay out of my life. I spiraled for days. I questioned everything. Was I wrong? Was I becoming obsessed? Maybe Emma had gotten her share, and our parents gave her the money privately. But why hide it? Why lie to me? My friends told me to let it go. It's just money, they said, but it wasn't. It was family, loyalty, truth, it was Grandma, and more than anything else, it was about what they took from us. Not just the inheritance, but the trust, the bond between sisters, the love that used to be effortless. They shattered it. I began to realize that this was never just about the money. This was about power. My parents had decided somewhere along the way that it was easier to control us if we were divided. And like fools, we'd played right into it, but they had underestimated me, and they had really underestimated Emma. Because the next week I got a knock at my door, and there she was. She looked tired. Her eyes were rimmed red, makeup smudged like she'd been crying. I read the rest of the documents, she said. I stepped aside to let her in. She sat down on my couch without a word, pulled a USB drive from her bag and handed it to me. I found Dad's emails. He forged our signatures. The room went quiet except for the low hum of my refrigerator. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I wanted to say it didn't matter, but it did. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded and sat beside her, and we cried, not just for the money, not even for Grandma. We cried for us. There's a strange silence that follows truth. Not the kind that's peaceful or quiet, the kind that hums with a charge, like the moment before a storm hits. That's what it felt like the night Emma sat on my couch and showed me the emails, Dad's emails. He had forwarded documents to a private account, PDF attachments, notes, scanned signature templates with our names labeled underneath in neat little captions. He had planned this. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't complicated paperwork or misunderstood estate law. It was deliberate. Calculated, stolen from us, from Grandma. I kept telling myself they wouldn't do this, Emma said, her voice raw. But then I remembered. They've always done this, just never with money. I looked at her. What do you mean? She leaned back into the couch, eyes glassy. Mom's guilt trips, Dad's way of rewarding obedience and punishing independence. You went to college out of state. Remember how they made you feel like a traitor, like you abandoned them. I nodded. I remembered. They raised us to compete, she said, to fight for affection, attention, approval, and it worked, until Grandma got sick and stepped in. The silence returned. We both knew the truth. Grandma had been our buffer, the only one who saw the games and refused to play, the only one who didn't choose sides, and now she was gone. The next day, we met at a cafe halfway between our apartments. It was quiet, tucked in the back of a bookstore, the kind of place Grandma would have loved. We brought laptops, folders, printed emails, everything. We built a timeline, the day Grandma died, the week the trust was dispersed, the exact transaction dates, the withdrawals, the fake signatures. They took the money 3 days after the funeral. 3. We listed out every lie, every manipulation, every conversation where our parents had twisted the truth. There were dozens. It was dizzying, like realizing the house you grew up in was built on sand. That night, Emma called our parents. She put them on speaker. We were in my apartment, the emails spread out on the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. "Hey, Mom," Emma said, her voice careful. "Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you. Are you okay? I want to talk to you and Dad, together." A pause. Then the rustle of the phone being passed. "What's going on, sweetheart?" Dad asked, the usual warm tone, coating his words like sugar over poison. "We know about the trust." Silence. Emma continued, voice shaking. "We know what you did. We have the documents, the emails, the fake signatures, everything." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mom laughed, a short, nervous chuckle. "Girls, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You don't know how estate law works, don't," I said, cutting in. "Don't lie again. You're being emotional," Dad said. "Grief can. Grief didn't forge our names, you did," Emma snapped. The line went dead. They called back an hour later. This time they didn't pretend. "What do you want?" Dad asked. His tone had shifted, cold, flat, calculated. "We want our money," I said, in an apology. Dad snorted. "That money's gone." Emma looked at me, then back at the phone. "Then I guess we'll see you in court." Over the next few days, we found a lawyer. Her name was Olivia Green, mid-40s, sharp, the kind of woman who didn't waste time on pleasantries or people pleasing. She looked through our documents and nodded slowly. "This is a clear case of trust fraud. You have enough to file a civil suit. and depending on how far you want to go, possibly criminal charges. We weren't ready to talk about prison. Not yet. We weren't sure if we ever would be, but we were sure about the money. About the truth, I don't care if I get $1, Emma said. I just want them to pay for what they did. I felt the same. Not out of revenge, out of love for each other, for Grandma, for the version of us that had once laughed in pillow forts and shared dreams about becoming astronauts or artists or writers. The lawsuit shook the family like an earthquake. Extended relatives started calling. Some offered support. Some begged us to stop. Some, mostly Dad's side, accused us of trying to destroy our parents, but we didn't back down. The court date was set. Discovery phase began, the emails, the bank withdrawals, the signatures. It was all laid out like a crime scene under fluorescent light. Our parents tried to settle privately, offered us hush money, apologies wrapped in legal speak. We refused. Because it was never about silence. It was about finally telling the truth. In the middle of all this, I found a voicemail on my phone. From Mom, I almost deleted it without listening, but I didn't. Her voice was thin, cracked. I didn't want this. I thought you girls didn't need it. I thought we did. After all we gave you, after everything we sacrificed. I know it was wrong, but we're still your parents. We're still family. Please stop this before it's too late. I played it for Emma. She didn't flinch. They didn't just take money. She said. They took Grandma's last wish. They took us. She was right. By the time the court date arrived, we were prepared. We wore black. We sat side by side. And for the first time in years, we weren't broken. We weren't manipulated. We weren't against each other. We were a team, sisters, the way Grandma always wanted. The courtroom smelled like paper and dust. It was smaller than I expected. Just a few rows of benches, pale wood paneling, and a single judge seated high above us. No drama, no gavel pounding. Just the quiet hum of a place where truth at long last was about to be heard. Emma sat beside me, fingers laced with mine, knuckles white. Our parents were across the aisle. Dad looked tired. Thinner, his jaw clenched, refusing to meet our eyes. Mom looked like she'd aged 5 years and 5 months. Her eyes were puffy. Her expression was one I barely recognized, not grief, not anger, but fear. It wasn't the fear of losing money. It was the fear of losing control. Our lawyer, Olivia, laid everything out with surgical precision. The trust documents, the fake signatures, the forged email chains, the bank withdrawals, all routed to accounts in our parents' names. All within days of Grandma's death. She quoted estate law, cited precedent, but most powerfully, she spoke like a daughter might, firm, clear, and deeply unwilling to let love be used as a leash. Our parents' lawyer tried everything. Confusion, deflection, emotional appeals. She was grieving. He said of my mother. They were struggling financially. He said of my father. They intended to pay it back. But when the judge asked, "Did you ever disclose the withdrawals to your daughters?" And neither of them could answer, we won, not just the case, but the truth. The court ordered the return of the full $400,000 plus legal fees and damages. They didn't go to jail, not yet. It wasn't a criminal trial, but a fraud report was filed, and their financial reputations were ruined. The community found out. Word spread through the neighborhood, the church, the old social circles where Mom had once paraded us like medals. People whispered, friends distanced themselves, that wasn't our revenge, that was just consequence. We didn't spend the money right away. We didn't buy cars or apartments or take trips to Europe. We used part of it to create something better. The Rose Morgan Foundation, a small nonprofit focused on financial literacy for young women and legal support for victims of inheritance fraud. Grandma's name was everywhere on the logo, on the brochures, on the soft leather, bound journals we gave away at workshops. We started small local schools, college events, but it grew. People listened. They came to our story like moths to light. Because it wasn't just ours. It had happened to them too. Sisters turned against each other. Money twisted into a weapon. Grief exploited by the people they trusted most. We were no longer victims. We were guides. It took time for us to trust each other again completely. Emma still flinched when someone said family. I still woke up some nights thinking I dreamt the whole thing. We both carried scars, but we didn't carry them alone. We healed in slow, quiet ways, baking Grandma's cookie recipe again, one winter morning with flour in our hair, watching old VHS tapes she recorded of our school plays, laughing at how awful our acting was, crying at the sound of her laugh in the background. We went to her grave one evening, sunset painting the sky pink and gold. Emma brought daisies, I brought the court documents. We laid them both down, side by side. I hope you're proud, Emma whispered. I think she always was, I said. I saw our parents again once, at the grocery store, months later. They looked smaller, worn out. Dad reached for a carton of milk and froze when he saw me. I didn't speak, neither did they. For the first time, they looked ashamed, and I realized I didn't hate them anymore. They had tried to break us, but in doing so, they revealed what Grandma always knew, that love built on conditions isn't love at all. It's leverage, and we'd walked away from it. One evening, after a long day at the foundation, Emma sat across from me at our office, a cozy space with plants on the windowsills and Grandma's photo framed on the wall. She was smiling. You remember when we used to fight over who got the bigger slice of cake? I laughed. Yeah, she always gave it to the other one when we did. Emma nodded. I think she knew the only way to make us stop fighting was to remind us that we were in it together. I looked at her, really looked, my sister, my friend, my coser. Viver, let's bake one tonight, I said. The chocolate one with raspberry jam. God, yes. We walked home under a quiet October sky, the same shade of gray, blue as the day Grandma died. But this time, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like peace, like finally coming home, not to a house or a bank account or an inheritance, but to each other.